Welcome to part two of my series, sort of a beginner's guide to the clarinet. So right now we're going to talk about assembling and disassembling the clarinet. So rule number one is to start from the bottom, which means the bell. All right. So you put the bell, I usually put it in my left hand, sort of like this. I have accidentally thrown my bell across the room before, taking my clarinet apart. So like a sturdy grip on the bell. And then you want to pick up the bottom joint, which looks like this. It's the longer one, if that helps. And the golden rule of putting the joints together is that you never want to push on the keys in a direction that's not how they're meant to be pushed. So a lot of people will try to put their hand up here and use this to put the clarinet together. And this bends all of these pinky keys. And if you do this every day for a year, you're going to completely ruin this whole mechanism. Like, I mean, they won't have to like replace it, but you'll need to take it in and get it fixed because things will stop working. So what you want to do is basically just use the natural up and down motion of the keys to give yourself something to grab onto. So what I do is I put my right hand, I take the palm of my hand and put it around the flat part, like the back of the joint where there are no keys, so that the majority of the pressure is actually on the wood and not the key work, right? And then I wrap the rest of my hand around so my fingers are not touching any of the keys, and then my thumb goes over and pushes down this little key right here. But I'm not putting any pressure on any of the keys except this one, and that one I'm just pushing down. I'm not pushing like side to side or anything weird. So just practice. Like I said, the important part is that the fat part of your hand is on just the wood and not on the keys. So the bottom of the joint, grab it like this. And then, like I said, firm grip here, you're pushing this key down with your thumb and you just put them together. Now, it's going to work better if you don't just like try to jam things together. So you always want to just rotate them smoothly together. If this is difficult, put on some cork grease. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the video on maintenance, but just remember, keep your corks greased. It should never be super difficult to put your clarinet together or take it apart. Now, if you overgrease them, pieces can just like fall off. So don't do that either. But you shouldn't have to push really hard. Like you can see how easy it is. Like they just slide on and they slide off. Boom. Okay, so now I put this piece in my left hand because I'm right-handed, so this might be different for you if you're left-handed. Might be more comfortable a different way, but just remember, don't push down on the keys. So I put my hand mostly on the bell and a little bit on this joint. If you only hold it by the bell, you run the risk of this piece coming off of the bell. So kind of put your hand across that connection so you're holding them together too while you're doing the rest of it. And then you want to pick up the top joint. So same thing for this one. The bottom and the back, like the bottom of the back, there's a big spot where there are no keys, okay? So that's where the palm of your hand goes. Remember, palm of your hand should not be on the keys. That's how you get yourself into trouble, okay? And then your fingers should wrap around the front, and what you want to do is you want to push down the second ring key, this one right here. And you'll notice when I do this, that little key at the bottom wiggles, and that's what you want because obviously that hangs down across the connection. So if you don't push it out, you run the risk of damaging that key because it'll be really close to the bottom joint. Okay, so we're holding it, palm on the back, pushing down that key, checking that should be out, holding this, both pieces, and then same thing as the bottom, you just twist them together. Should be nice and easy. Now for this one, it matters a lot where they line up. So some people, especially beginners, just check with like the holes on the front. But what you really should be checking to make sure that they're lined up properly is that bridge key in the middle. So that's that little key that we wiggled out by pushing this ring, okay? So it's really hard to show on Zoom because of where it is. But like, it's this little friend right in there. So there's a piece on the bottom joint that he sits on top of or connects with. Like there'll be two metal pieces, depending on your make and model of clarinet, they look a little different. But basically there'll be one piece here and one piece here, and you don't want them like this or like this, just right, perfectly lined up. Now on some instruments, you do actually have to have them just a tiny bit off. So on my clarinet, for example, it works a lot better if the top joint is just slightly rotated compared to the bottom joint, which is like, okay, but that's something that you'll get used to and you'll know about your instrument the longer you play. So when you're first starting out, I would say just line them right up. But if you ever run into trouble where you're like, wow, my low notes or like the notes on my like lower end of my right hand are just not coming out, it squeaks every time, check your bridge key and try just like rotating it a little bit and see if it helps. Because half the time, that's the problem. I get students who do this all the time and they're like, my instrument's not working. And then I just wiggle their bridge key like 2 millimeters and I'm like, now it works. So this is like life hack 101. If you think your clarinet's broken, check the bridge key because that's usually the problem. Okay, so now we have most of the instrument put together. We have our bell, bottom joint, top joint. Now you take your barrel and the fat end goes down. Okay, so this guy, same thing, try not to push down on a bunch of keys, but just rotate him onto the top. Boom, boom, boom. There's not really like a front or back to the bell or the barrel. They are stamped usually, so that will like be the front, but like they are the same inside. So you can, if it's twisted, it doesn't matter at all. Okay. And then next is mouthpiece. So same thing, it's got a cork. Make sure you've used some cork grease so it goes on nice and smooth. And then you want to make sure that, so the curved part of the mouthpiece is on the front, like the beak part is on the front. And this little flat part where the reed goes is on the back. So the hole in the mouthpiece is called the window. It's really hard to see on the camera. There you go. That's called the window, and you want that to be lined up with the register key, which is the long key on the back. Okay, so just make sure that they're right in line with each other. You'll be good to go. So then the last but not least is getting the reed on. So get your reed, get it wet, and not just the front either. You have to wet both sides because getting the reed wet lets the reed vibrate properly. And if it doesn't vibrate properly, you're not going to get a sound that you like. So make sure the whole thing is wet. Kind of do this for a little bit. Okay. And then you put it on that flat part on the back. So here's the register key. Here's my reed. And you want to make sure it's nice and straight. So you want to check the very tip and make sure it's lined up. And then you want to check the bottom because the little flat part you'll still be able to see underneath the reed, and you want to make sure it's completely centered, okay? And generally speaking, you want the tip of the reed to be pretty much even with the tip of the mouthpiece. Maybe just slightly under, but like a millimeter under, not much. Don't try to play like this because you'll have problems. Okay, so basically you want it lined up with the tip, and then you take your ligature. Now every ligature is different. So some people's screws go on the back and sometimes they go on the front. You can tell because the screws will always be on the right side because most people are right-handed. Sorry, left-handed people. So you put that down. As you can see, my screws are on the back and they're on the right-hand side. So you should be able to turn them with your right hand pretty easily, right? And that's how the front looks. So the ligature goes right beneath where the smooth part of the reed starts. There's that. There's this side. And ta-da! We've done it. And then to take it apart, you just do the same thing in the opposite order. So ligature off, reed off, mouthpiece off, barrel, and still make sure you're not pushing down on the keys. Push down the bridge key, twist that off, hold this, palm on the back, twist this off, and ta-da, you're done. We did it.